Alright, YouTube, let's do this again. Um, this is going to be a video on a number of things. One thing is going to be, and I've talked about this before, is going to be a video on, in large part, on a recent article on Alex Jones's website, because I do watch that, both for information and because I am very critical of a lot of it. It's not just because I agree, because a lot of it I don't agree with, and I often talk about that. And I'm sure if you've seen a lot of my blogging and stuff, you know that I'm very critical of a lot of what the right wing believes, and I'm probably more on the left wing, but that's not the point here. Anyways, that's a bit of a backstory. But continuing onward, this is going to be a video on the conservatives' war on men, and we all know about the feminist war on men. A lot of feminists don't like men. We know about that, but also conservatism is not pro-male. So don't think just because and not really liberal, but kind of pseudo-liberal left wing, just because there is an anti-male sentiment in the far left, that means the right wing is pro-male, because it's not. And I have talked about before, as a humanist, male rights exist, and there are real male issues, and there are male rights activists out there, but I do not consider that to be conservative. And I talked to you before about conservatives and their refusal to admit that circumcision or child genital mutilation, infant male genital mutilation, is a violation of male rights. They don't want to talk about the issue. I've seen them even defend and support the issue for various reasons. Under various reasons, for various pretense, and that's what I'm talking about here. But that's not what I'm talking about. This video isn't about circumcision for the most part, but 1 minute. This video isn't going to be about circumcision for the most part, but that's one issue. And one of the things I hate the most about circumcision is how it's taking away a person's right to choose, even about their body and their ability to make a choice of themselves or to give consent about something like that. And it's a surgical alteration of a person that you have deemed not good enough. And if someone else deeming that person is needing to be this way or that way because of religious beliefs or because of any other number of cultural beliefs, and I find that to be very idiotic. And I've talked about before the ideal that foreskin looks weird. Well, I hate telling you this, but all penises look weird, and for that matter, so do vaginas. I don't think anyone has sex with anyone just because they like the way their genitals look. No one does. But that's not even the point. The point is you're taking away from them their choice and replacing it with a choice of yours for what they should be and what, you know. And this video is off to a horrible start as usual, and I apologize, but this video is going to be about pretty much, again, GQ, and I'm not defending the article or defending the cover rather, or condemning it, but my take on it is it's interesting to see some people on the right wing or conservatives take on the issue, and to see an article on InfoWar and how they would apply to the issue, and I find this to be very bizarre. Now, I've just told you about genital mutilation and how in part, that is a part of the male gender role in America. It really is. And I want to go on to talk about also what they said in response to this. And I have talked about there needs to be reforms made in male culture, and what masculinity is. And we need to kind of really, I think, look at masculinity, look at what it is to be male. And while I'm not a feminist, there is no question, some truth to the idea that there is toxic masculinity. And it negatively affects men just the same as it does women. Damn. On another note, let me just say these pop-ups are hell. I mean, like, honestly, you wonder why. Having to deal with that all day is just, but the point is, I'm a little bit out of it. I probably could have made a better video. I apologize, but back to the point. one of the articles, what they said, and I was going to go more into this, but right now, just talking about what they said, what GQ is celebrating, rather, is a feminization of men. Because, that's wrong. There's something wrong with a male showing feminine instincts or being feminine. It's not as if though no one seems to have a problem with females showing masculine instincts when female wrestlers are main eventing WrestleMania and when females are in UFC and you have Ronda Rousey cage fighting and females are doing things that men do. No one says, well, that's masculinizing women. Women need to be, there's something wrong with that. Well, why in the hell is there something wrong with the male showing a more feminine side of themselves? Because fuck. But why is there something wrong with the male showing a more feminine side of himself? And also, it goes on to say, I'm just going to read what they said. It says that the GQ celebrates feminization of men, not masculinity. Real masculinity is the desired ability to protect, the desire to lead, strength, emotional fortitude. Masculinity is not the chauvinist bullshit that the media portrays, or toxic masculinity. Or this cover portrays men do not, and it's not what this cover portrays either. And then here's the most telling part, but I'll leave that first. First is, let me say, the ability to protect. So again, we need to protect, not ever be protected. Our emotions aren't even important. We're supposed to protect. We're not supposed to be protected. Our emotions do not need to be shown. We are essentially emotionless robots and soldiers, and that's our place. I mean, that's what they're saying, and they say that in so many ways. The desire to lead, when as if though females don't have the desire to lead, as if though you have to be their concept of a man to lead. You can lead if you're fit to lead. If you're not supposed to lead, or you don't want to lead, or you don't know how to lead, you shouldn't lead. But anyways, it also says strength and emotional fortitude, whatever that means, because it's not really even telling you, but basically in so many words, they're telling you you're not supposed to have, and you don't need to have emotion or express yourselves emotionally. And that's not to say that men should just be a bunch of crybabies or that you should all act like the 14-year-old kid in eyeliner. We're not saying that, but to act as if though men just need to be these tough kind of, muscle-headed alpha males all the time and just shut up and work and go to war and never complain or never talk about their issues or their emotions or their problems and just act like, that's absolute bullshit. And that's very anti-male. And it's as anti-male as anything a feminist could say. And you are creating a basis for, or an environment for toxic masculinity, real toxic masculinity to flourish in. And that's what you're doing. So you can say you don't support that all you want. You're creating an environment for that. And it's just as bad for men as it is women. And it leads to a culture of bullying. It leads to people having to suppress themselves, as you're pretty much promoting. They're having, and it leads to men having to suppress their emotions, their parts of themselves, their beliefs, their sexuality, their sexual expression, or who they are as a person, their artistic freedom, the desires, not getting help often, not getting medical treatment that they need, not getting mental health treatment they need, especially in the case of veterans, not being given economic help when they need economic help, not being able to admit they have a problem. It does lead to that kind of behavior and that kind of treatment. And finally, one of the things that they say that really kind of sums up the entire thing, and that's what they do when they circumcise a child, by the way. It's even at birth, and from birth, you're saying that child doesn't really have a right, and you're not supposed to be sympathetic towards him. And there's a reason we only do that to boys in America at this point, because we only look at boys that way. Oh, well, it's okay, he'll tough it out. You're talking about a fucking infant. But you're talking about him literally as if though he's a full-grown man, and that would be crazy to do to even to a man. And if somebody does want it done, even though my advice still would not exactly be get it done, then my advice would still be against it. But if you want it done, then that's good. But it should be something you want to do. And even then, if you want my advice, I would say don't. But if you want to, that's your problem. But again, you're just, from birth, literally, you're teaching males this shit and treating them like they're less. So finally ending it, he says, forgetting all that bullshit about what feminists say and whatever, because we all know about that, and they're they're kind of getting the attention off what they're saying, and they're just scapegoating the feminists and trying to take up for their crap that they're saying. And ultimately, what they are saying has a potential to be chauvinistic as well as anti-male. But ending this, it's not what that cover portrays. Okay, and then it ends, and this is the most telling. It says men don't go to war in dresses. That's what it says. So they already are telling you men go to war. They want you to go to war. War is good. And women don't go to war. Men go to war. So then I ask, how in the hell is this fucking pro-male? Or how does that sound pro-male to you? And do we really need more wars? And are you honestly supporting people that claim to be anti-war? And that was for Alex Jones, for example, got a lot of his start by saying that he was against war and anti-war. And now they're posting quotes and articles and things by people that say, men need to be more manly, and we don't go to war. Not only do men need to be manly, but men don't go to war in dresses. Well, why are they going to war? Do you really want more fucking war? And every single man on the planet, are they supposed to go to war? Is there no man that probably would be better off not in a fucking war? I mean, do you not realize how stupid that is? And why do only men go to war? Why wouldn't women go to war just the same? What the fuck would be the difference? But again, this is the point that I was making largely, is that none of this was pro-male. Nothing that is being said there is pro-male. It's when they're saying war on men, they're talking about their concept of what they believe men to be. And they're just as much a part of the real war on men as feminists are. And no, they're different from feminists in that they're not pro-female and they don't care about females and they're against things like abortion, but that has nothing to do with being pro-you or being for you. And it's very complicated. And I realize this is not they're probably not going to be one of my better videos. I kind of fucked it up. I kind of rattled on or rambled on a little bit, not as good as I could have been. And I'm just not all there right now. But let's see. Finally, some other stuff. Other than that, and it really does, by the way, all go back to genital mutilation if you really think about it. It's the symbolic, almost stealing of a man, their ability to choose and who they are. And I think we all know who we are better than someone else does, and we can make what decisions we want based on what we know about ourselves, and not have other people decide every little single fucking thing about us. And all they're trying to do really isn't help men, and they're not pro-male, and they don't give a fuck about masculinity or men, but they want to be able to define masculinity and what a man is and what men are, and then control that for their purposes and for the purposes of society, and both for the purposes of females, but mainly for rich men, rich people controlling men and their interests and utilizing from their interests. And then you also, or the utilization of men for wealthy interests, or the interests of wealth or capital and of the top 1%. And it also represents just the same with females. They also want to oppress females, and they did used to oppress them, and they would have them in a fucking kitchen doing nothing but, making sandwiches and popping out kids all day. And at the end of the day, no woman wants to do that, and women should have the right to run for president, as many females now do, or hold a political office, or compete in sports, or do anything they want to do. And if they want to be a housewife, they can do that, or whatever they want to do. And it should be the same for men. As far as fashion goes and the ideal of what male fashion needs to be, I do have to admit that I did not think some of the GQ clothing in that magazine was the best looking clothing from anyone's point of view, male or female. And I do like androgyny, but I didn't think that was the best looking clothing, honestly. But we've seen that with other forms of clothing for men and women, and some of the clothing that's not that attractive turns out to be better once it gets produced, or they improve upon it, or that's never usually that's not the first model. That's the first model. That's not what's actually bought in the end. Like, we've seen that with a lot of female clothing. They sell ridiculous. They have these models dressed in ridiculous clothing, and then but they usually never end up selling a lot of that. In part because it doesn't look good. But and finally, it also goes into the cult of production, and you really need to look up something called the neoconservative. Though let's be honest, at this point, it's all conservative bullshit. But it was called the neoconservative project for the New American Century that started in the 70s. And I'm not going to go into 9/11 and what happened or anything else. All I know is they said they wanted a Pearl Harbor type event. And they wanted to do this is a way of controlling the military and going into all these wars. And they have done all of that. And they have sent away a lot of men and just women too, I guess, to die in these fucking wars. And they have been dying in these damn wars now for going on 20 years. And they said they wanted a Pearl Harbor type event, and that's what they were given. They ended up getting a Pearl Harbor level event that just so happened within the first year of the Bush administration, where three of the fucking Bush administration higher ups or members were all part of the Project for a New American Century. Cheney, of course, being the vice president, the other two being Carl Wolfowitz and Donald Rumsfeld. I'm making that clear. And then Cheney. I said Donald. I don't think I'm talking about the president. It was nothing to do with them. The point is, then 9/11 happens. Then we go into all these wars, and they wanted to call it production. They were formed to compete against, primarily against the hippie movement and of the cultural changes that took place in the 60s. And they were formed in the early or mid 70s to compete against the hippies, as well as things like feminists and whatever else, because they wanted to create a culture production or a kind of collectivized mass, or to balkanize the mass is workers to produce into military, and they wanted to extend out, like similar to what you've seen other empires do in the past. And we've done that. We've went into more and more countries for economic exploitation of those countries. And we're going in, getting bombed and killing people and being killed for these bullshit wars that we shouldn't be in. And then you have also a culture production. And the first thing Bush said do after 9/11 happened was, what did he say do? Go and buy something, go shopping. Kind of a weird thing to say after that, isn't it? But that's what they want. They want you to produce and consume, and then they want you to reproduce and keep having kids. And then they're going to keep... Fuck me. But they want you to keep producing, and they want you to keep having kids, and then keep reproducing, and keep consuming the products that you produce, and use whatever little money you get. And meanwhile, by the way, and that's got a lot to do with, that's got a lot to do with why we circumcise children, because, and they kind of jokingly talked about it. There was even a comedian named Brittany Cummings who was kind of jokingly talking about it, but she even said that might be one of the reasons why they do that, because, and I'm not sure, I mean, I guess she was against her, and she said she was, and then she kind of changed it. I don't know what she was saying, but the point is, they want to decrease sexual sensation. So you're concentrating less on sex, and then you're concentrating more on work. And that was the entire reason for doing that to begin with. And the kind of, not Puritans, but what were they? The like Victorian era type people that believed in kind of puritanical sex values wanted people to work more, and they wanted to produce and consume and produce and consume, and that's what they wanted the population of people to do, and that's what we're doing. And meanwhile, what you're also doing is you're oversaturating. While you're doing that, while you're having more kids, and that's going to be, those kids are going to one day be workers. And what you're really doing is you're oversaturating the market or the workplace with workers. So what that does is it drives down wages. Just like I talked about, if you wanted to get rid of meat eating, simply oversaturate the market with vegetation and with non-meat products, and you would drive down meat production. Well, it's the same thing when you oversaturate the markets with workers. It drives down the... Fuck me. Anyway, what you do is you drive down when you oversaturate the market with workers, you drive down the wages, because of the value of those workers are now being driven down because you have more workers. And so they want to keep everyone in these tight family units of male and female with these two specific gender roles, and then these big families that all go to work. And then when they're not going to work, they're fighting these damn wars and being blown up. And like I talked about before, that has a lot to do with this. And the group that gets fucked over the most is men. That's not to say it doesn't fuck women over too, but men really get it. And that's what they're trying to create. And that's what the fucking society we have now really is. But that's all I can talk about. I was going to talk about some other stuff, but that's enough for now. But as I was saying, that's all I can really talk about. I wanted to talk about some other stuff, but that's enough for now. And that's about all. P666.